And I'm here with Gretchen Lehman, and we're going to talk about why LinkedIn isn't a new trick. I always ask this question, Gretchen, before we start: is where can people find you?
Oh, so it's just LinkedIn and then my profile / Gretchen Lehman. I do mostly consulting, so I'm off the grid a lot. I don't really announce who my clients are. It's all through referral. But if you want to know what I'm about, you can definitely find me on LinkedIn.
Brilliant. So you just talk us through a little bit about your journey of how you've got here, because you've always worked in you helping B2B businesses, helping businesses grow, and aligning sales and marketing, haven't you?
Yeah, it's kind of a fun journey. I started out in marketing, well, not marketing, in branding. So pre 2008, like the .com era, where we're doing branding packages, where you would legitimize companies, you give them a really nice polished package, website, logo, all their collateral and messaging, and bam, their revenue doubled. And I loved that, but I couldn't prove that design was making an impact. There was no like tangible way. And then, as we all know, a lot happened after 2008. A whole lot of graphic designers were out of business. And so I had to find a new path forward. So I naturally gravitated towards lead generation. And I met somebody as I was making that transition. I met somebody who was a sales guy, typical sales guy. Forgive me, I do work with a lot of them. They can have swagger. And he was saying to me, he's like, you can't start with branding. You got to start with sales. And I walked away, and it was a networking event. So I was like, what? An arrogant jerk, like, you know nothing. Design is like amazing what it can do, but it frustrated me. I couldn't prove it, that in my experience. And so lead generation was kind of that natural transition of like, I could finally prove it and make incremental changes and start to show how it was making a difference. And I started figuring out that really sales did have a whole lot of, the guy had a point. So I started learning to align and understanding what sales needed on their end of the journey. And so I have this unique experience of all the way from first touch to knowing what it takes to close a deal. And that has been a really powerful tool for me to really help businesses grow, is understanding that entire progression.
So I've written down in my notes here, and then underlined it as well, the question, which is how to convince people of the power of LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's I find it's a process usually.
Right. So how do you do that? Because I mean, I've been using LinkedIn for years. You've been using it. We understand the power, but there's a lot of people out there that seem to think it's some sort of witchcraft. So how do we do that?
Some of it comes down to showing and doing incrementally. I find, and I hope this isn't offensive, it depends on the age of the person.
Okay.
And the perspective that they come from. So Gen X, more people, they're going to be a lot more hesitant in the beginning. They don't like putting themselves out. It feels very like exposing themselves. But so we typically start with some small campaigns, and it's a lot of education of explaining, hey, these are all things you're very familiar with networking. This is the same exact thing. We're building connections, we're establishing trust, we're building a relationship, and translating it on how we're doing it on LinkedIn. So a lot of education that slowly they start to understand, and that at some point or another the light bulb goes off and they go, oh, now I understand. And once you have a client who's on board, then it's like, I get it and I see how it's working. So
I think that when one of the things about Gen X people is that they're used to going to networking events, and it says he reaching for a whole bunch of business cards.
yeah.
And they're used to the exchange of that and having conversations. And when you actually show people that actually this is what's happening on LinkedIn, if you want to be successful, you do exactly what you did at a networking event. You go up to someone and you have a conversation, and then they go, "Oh my God." And and it's like, so you can go to the networking event and you could be there all day. Wow. And it's an amazing thing to watch when people get it. Yeah.
It really is. I call out to people's attention. It's like it's networking is remembering someone's face. So your face is on the profile. So like the number one thing is have a solid headshot where I can see your face so that I can make a connection with you. And then remember every time you post in your stream, that's like your face showing up and you're making a connection along with your name to anybody else who's in the stream reading that. Like that's it's anonymous. It's happening anonymously, but you have to think about like the dynamics, human psychology in real life and how it translates. So yeah, it's a lot of little details like that.
I know some people that insist on you having a photo where you can actually see, so you can make eye contact. So the
Oh,
person,
it's
whereas I know some people that don't, and they've actually got like a side headshot, but they actually, the way that they've had it shot actually looks brilliant because it kind of looks different. And I'm never really sure what the difference is. I mean, do you have a view on that or?
I did. You're making me think. I forget, and I wish I could remember the website, and I bet it's still around. I conducted a test on this exactly. Well, it was like different style of photos. Does it really matter if you're looking right at the camera, like to that eye contact? What's in the background, like your posture, the lighting, all that stuff. And I did a. I wish I could find it. I don't think it's live anymore. I did a comparison on Match.com, like, and did two different profiles. It's a dating thing, and like who would interact with me and who wouldn't, based on I took two totally different photographs, like headshots on the profile, and it was yeah, it was close enough to see my face, but enough to see like get a sense of who I was and my style. Um, and I think you could see my eyes. I was looking right at the camera. I'm trying to think about what else. Um, but I'm not sure. I'd love to have I don't know if you'd be super close, like we're even you and I right now. Is that better? We could just
I don't know. I don't know. Tom makes a good point there. Isn't it? It's ironic that some generations who don't want to put themselves out there on LinkedIn will also at the same time freely share on other platforms and not worry about it. It's true. I know people that are terrified of LinkedIn, but they're more than happy to share all kinds of obscure photos on Facebook.
what is your professional? Is this like this, right? That whole thing of you never burn a bridge, you're like perfectly manicured, like professional brand. You're scared of what people are gonna think of you.
But
Yeah.
that's because it personally, if I put myself out there and you say, Tim, I think you look terrible, I take it personally, which is why so many people hide behind corporate stuff. Because if I go out there and I post a brochure and you say, well, I think the brochure is rubbish, you say, well, I agree with you, but it's the company and they pay me, and every month I get a paycheck. So that's always the
Oh,
difficulty that people have. Why one of the reasons why they hide behind brochures.
yeah. Interesting.
So in terms of um, how do you get people to understand that it's a place where you can go and build relationships?
It comes down to a lot of conversations and showing them. Usually, it's at least getting agreement to let me do a small campaign for you and
Right.
let me show you how it works. And then it's stepping through and showing them and translating from okay, so we're going to post. Usually, one of the ones that works well is people want to post their company, pushing out their company brand. Like, no, this is social. Like, you wouldn't really come just talking about how great my company is and a network. You'd be talking about something like the equivalent of the how's the weather.
Well,
You,
you live in Denver, so you go hiking,
yeah,
mountain biking. Here's me mountain biking. Here's me hiking.
yeah. I mean, I don't know that I would do that on LinkedIn, but I would find something. that we can all relate to. Like there was this great post, a young lady posted about how she just started her own marketing agency and how she's like showed her notebook of how she makes notes and stuff. And I was like, that's awesome. That's so much wide appeal. We all have our opinions about what notebook and like pens we want to use. And so I tagged on that and was like, I love, got to have it dotted. And I tagged some of my peers and I was like, what do you guys use? And it started a conversation like that. Like we can all relate to that. That's easy. That's comfortable. That's safe.
Here's my note. Here's my notebook.
Right? I just bought a whole stack of new ones. Yeah.
I did use an iPad for a little while, and I found that actually when I write, it helps me remember. But when I was typing into an iPad, I didn't remember. So I went back to maybe I blame it on it's obviously my generation.
I wonder if, yeah, because I'm the same thing. I can't type live notes on even like a Google Doc. It does not. I can't process and it doesn't register in my brain. I have to write them.
Going back to that content, I mean, it's a great example of what we would call live content, which is where if you're posting brochures, nobody's interested because you've got to understand that initially, top of the funnel, no one knows and nobody cares who your products and company is. So it's kind of it's a waste of time to do that. It's only when actually they start moving through a funnel where they go, oh right, oh you do that, okay, right, well I understand that, and so, but actually sharing something about I've started a new business, and this is how I'm going to take notes or something like that. That's a lovely thing to share as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it makes so there's I came across, it's called the Levenger's theory. You might want to Google it. It's worth Googling.
It's what? Sorry?
Levenger's theory. It is the progression, the stages of how relationships build. So at the beginning, kind of what is the content quality of the relationship? So the very, very beginning, it's hi, how's the weather? We're trying to figure out, do we have any kind of connection? Do we trust each other? And then, so it steps it out. It's interesting. It mirrors the funnel in a lot of ways. So I find myself going back to that when I'm writing scripts for our sales teams. It's like, nope, they've never heard of you. Like, you got to remember, we're keeping it much more high level, trying to connect, build some credibility that you're trustworthy, that just because it's on LinkedIn and I haven't met you in person, they have a sense that you are a real human being who has their best interest in mind.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people, the mistakes that people make is that they want to rush onto LinkedIn, and because they're passionate about what they sell because it pays the mortgage, they think that everybody else is going to be passionate about what they sell, and we're not.
Right.
And so, I mean, if you go back to the idea that it's that this is a networking event, you will go up to the person and say, like we had a conversation before we started, which is that in London where I am, it's raining, and of course everybody goes, oh, it's always raining in London, and then you get, so how far have you travelled? Oh, and when we talked, I was in Denver back in October 2019, so I was telling you about how one day it snowed and the next day it was really sunny and everyone's got shorts on. And it's like, and you go, well, that's Denver, and you go, what? And we have a conversation, and then you get to the point where you go, so what do you do? And that's kind of down the stages of the conversation.
Yep, precisely. It's easy once you realize that and you can stop yourself. It's amazing how much opportunity you can unlock. You really can.
So one of the things that we talked about in the preparation was the fact that using your LinkedIn stream to stay top of mind. What do you mean by that?
Well, so you think about people's behavior and how you use LinkedIn, and when do you use LinkedIn? I think about it as like, they wake up in the morning, like, I don't feel like getting out of bed. I kind of want to know what's going on. I will scroll. I might stop at lunch. Different people have different patterns, I've noticed. But you're thinking about putting yourself in your audience's shoes, depending on where you are with your audience. We usually do campaigns where we target connections that we're trying to have a conversation with. And we might be having conversations in direct message, but that can feel a little too forward early on in the process. So the stream is a way of remembering that these are all new connections. So now that you're going to now show up your face with your name and whatever your little title you put there about what you're about, and then whatever the content is that you put there. So if you're early on in the process with your audience, it's this super high level, how's the weather kind of content you're thinking about it, and that starts to build some credibility, like you're a human being. You're relatable, like so that you're trustworthy. Now someone is going to maybe look at your website, maybe look at your profile, and they now might be more open to talking to you and direct messaging. Did I answer your question? I realize I'm like, blah, 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 blah.
No, you did. You are answering it because I'm looking down to see what my next question.
Okay, good.
So that's why I'm kind of looking distracted. Don't worry. No, it's exactly. I mean, as you've got this opportunity in effect to wave at your prospects. So what you do is you connect to the people that you're trying to influence, but without going, buy my stuff. What you're doing is that you're connecting, saying that you want to have a relationship with them and saying how interesting they are, and then you can wave at them every day with a bit of content. And so I mean the problem with email is how many emails can you send to somebody before they get annoyed and unsubscribe? One every 2 weeks, one every month, I don't know. But on LinkedIn you can do it every day.
And it doesn't feel, because they can scroll past if they don't feel like but there was your face and your name. There are some people in my brilliant.
That's interesting. Another. Oh, that's another interesting. And it may be that. I know that Gary V. I post every day, and I know Gary V. does. And Gary V. says, people say, well, why do you post every day? Well, he said that Monday's article, you may just go scroll past it and go, that's not interesting. Tuesdays, you go, man, that's not interesting. But Wednesday, you go, oh, that's really interesting, because that happens to resonate with you in some particular shape or form. And my answer to the question always, if you're not posting, you are invisible. So.
Oh, and you for sure are, because there's at this point, the thing that's been challenging, like 5 years ago on LinkedIn, was so easy to get people's attention. But now that people are starting to understand the power of LinkedIn, now there's a whole lot more posts in there that you really have to be strategic and intentional about your posting.
Which brings me on to the next point, which is you talked about building value. What do you mean by building value?
Well, you have to be aware of so when someone's scrolling in their screen, right? Like they just like the equivalent on Facebook, you don't want to know what the person ate like that day. Like, I could care less what you ate, unless you're some magnificent chef who's saying, and if this looks good to you, I have the recipe and go visit here, right? It's all about what is that person, what is going to help them in their day. So it could be, as much as at like the high level, some giving value to somebody might be a positive quote, depending on your personal brand and who you are. Be like, I just found this really great quote, meant a lot to me, encouraged me. I hope that it encourages you. So that could be value. It could be value of, hey, we just went and interviewed somebody and they gave us all sorts of valuable insight to this specific problem. It's going to be 2-minute read. And here's a little teaser about it. Like, so it's solving a problem that your audience has. I do find how to is very powerful if you can get it succinct. Those are the kind of things I think of with value. But it does depend on where you are on that progression of your funnel, if that makes sense.
So Natalie has left a long comment, which I think is really good, which is that's because we have two personas. We are at home. We are not necessarily the same at work. Hence, the X generation are reluctant to or hesitant to put themselves out there. Up until 2 years ago, I was not active on LinkedIn, and I'll read it out. Now I am. It's also a mindset thing. I don't have a string of accolades behind me, so how on earth could I use this platform like this? It's just getting one's head around it, and now I'm feeling a little more confident. I'm posting. Good. And you're engaging in podcast, Leslie, which is fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you want me to answer?
Yeah.
We can think about answering. So I agree with you. I have a different persona on LinkedIn than I do probably in my personal, like on Facebook. I'm not even on Facebook anymore. Like I do it obligatory because there's family on there. It wants to see pictures of my kids and whatever. But I'm not going to show like super personal stuff. It is finding that happy medium of what feels comfortable and authentic to you that still also feels professional, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think it's this. We often have a debate internally about what is personal content, and I think that there is there's certain things about our lives which we shouldn't share, and we probably wouldn't even share those on Facebook. But what we found in our research is that personal content. So, for example, my partner and I went to the Royal Theatre Drury Lane this weekend, and we had a backstage tour. And we took a photograph of ourselves in front of the Royal Theatre Drury Lane, which is an iconic building, iconic theatre in London, and said, we're in front of the Royal Theatre Drury Lane. We just had a back scene tour. This is what we did. Now, that's personal content, but not personal.
Right.
And what I think that does is that I think that for buyers, what they say is, there's Tim Hughes. Now, some people may look at it and go, I think Tim Hughes is an idiot, and I'm never going to buy from him. And that actually is brilliant, because what I've done is I've qualified those people out. Because the classic problem you have right now is you have salespeople running around trying to sell to people they'll never sell to. But I've qualified all those out. So, but I've already had someone come to me today and go, they've committed to me that they're going to write some content, and so they wrote the content and said, I've written a blog. Can you tell me what you think? And by the way, I love the photo of you and your partner in London at the weekend. So, but what it does is that it means that it turns you into this thing about human being, and what people want are relationships with human beings. There's also a psychological thing is that if I come to LinkedIn, there is an assumption that if I'm going to sell to you and you're going to buy, you have an assumption that you can sell to me and I'm going to buy. Right. So if I turn up and I'm a robot, that means that repository is basically gone. Therefore, that everything that LinkedIn it stands for basically falls over.
Yep. Well, and I think that that's the danger as people get into that. They think it's some kind of formula and that you can automate it, and you can't. You have to show up and be a human being, or it doesn't work.
Yes.
I think when you were talking, it was kind of, when I work with clients, a lot of the beginning work is to get the essence of their personal brand. Like, what is it like to work with them? Are they super direct, like polite but direct, and they like to get things done? Well, that I'm going to want the content to reflect that a little bit. So because that will draw the right type of people to him. And yes. A lot of people who don't like that style, it won't, because they'll never want to work with him anyway.
Yes. So, and you might as well, if there's certain things that you believe in and that have a certain belief system, then you might as well get them out. I mean, we train some people, and they have very strong beliefs about same-sex marriage and same-sex relationships, and they put that out there right in front on their summary on LinkedIn, because they wanted to be in the situation. If someone says, I don't like that, then they go away. But if someone says, I can understand that and I can empathize that, then what happens is the person actually walks towards you. And that's
Yep.
an amazing thing.
Yeah. It's true. It's that's how you build like authenticity.
Yes.
And there's a difference. I would say, you know, I just saw a post about authenticity and understanding what that really is. And there are lines, like you have to think about showing up as a real human being, but authentic doesn't mean permission to just let it all hang out and say whatever.
Yes.
There's still human psychological rules about how we interact with each other and how we interact with strangers that still applies online.
Hmm.
So it's keeping that in
And
mind.
that's that. And it's it's the difference between the something that's personal and which you might want to actually not post, and human content, which is
Mhm.
fundamentally different.
Yeah, agreed.
Gretchen, thank you so much for coming on and talking through that. The time goes so quickly,
That was
and it was been great fun, and we've got some great and thanks to Tom and Natalie for diving in and giving us some things to talk about as well at the same time. So I really appreciate them and appreciate you coming on as well.
yeah. Thank you for inviting me. It was fun.
You're welcome. And
About LinkedIn. So
yeah, I think that I'm biased. I think LinkedIn is a wonderful place, and it still amazes me that people don't understand the power, and they seem to still think it's witchcraft or something.
I know.
So remind people where they can find you.
The best place is to connect with me on LinkedIn. So just linkedin.com and then I think it's /Gretchen Lehman.
Okay, I think it is. Yes, yeah. Gretchen, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a